So President Trump announcing a major breakthrough in efforts to end the war in Ukraine, speaking with both Russian President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky today, posting on Truth Social, quote, "We want to stop the millions of deaths taking place in the war with Russia, Ukraine. We agreed to work together very closely, including visiting each other's nations. We have also agreed to have our respective teams start negotiations immediately." President Zelensky posting on X, quote, "Together with the U.S., we are charting our next steps to stop Russian aggression and ensure a lasting, reliable peace. As President Trump said, let's get it done," says Zelensky. Remember, this war started nearly 3 years ago. It has killed an estimated 100,000 Ukrainian troops, 150,000 Russian forces, although most people that we speak with say that estimate is very low and includes, of course, thousands of civilians. So all of these discussions happening just hours after Russia released American Marc Fogel in a prisoner swap. Now another American is about to be free, one of 3 detainees released by Belarus. Let's bring in Adam Boehler, the U.S. envoy for hostages. Adam, your thoughts on these discussions as we look toward a hopeful end to the war and on these releases of hostages, which I know you have worked very hard on.
Well, I think it was a major step forward. Marc Fogel's release to Steve Witkoff on his own personal plane, I'll note, going out under the president's orders to get him. And now you see what these kind of things do. I think when you have a country take a unilateral step and release a priority and focus on a priority of the president's, that can move things forward. Now, they weren't connected. It was a step, but it means that people can be in contact. And the president has been very clear here. He's got a few priorities in this area. One is getting our Americans home, and 2 is ending a war that has killed so many millions of people on both sides.
You know, one of the interesting sequences here was that we saw the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, say in Europe that Ukraine will never be part of NATO, that is not part of this plan, at least not right now. And then you have the phone call with Putin and Trump. Clearly, that is a big priority for Putin in Russia. He does not want Ukraine to join NATO. And NATO has had, Ukraine has had assurances that that will be in the future. How does that get reconciled? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the president himself is able to imagine things past way where they are now. In terms of, Russia and Ukraine. Now, I think both countries need to understand that they're in relative safety. If Russia feels their borders are constantly being threatened or there's an issue there, that's a problem for them. So I think the president looks forward and says, this is how it should be. We should end the war. There should be territorial sovereignty on both sides. Now, what does that need to look like? Does Ukraine need to join NATO tomorrow? I don't think so. It's an agitator. So that's what he's thinking.
So Ukraine has entered the area of Kursk. And it sounds like, from what Zelensky is talking about, that he could see some sort of trade where he gives Russia back the territory they went into in Kursk in exchange for the Donbass. So is that the shape that you see this potentially taking? And is Crimea done? Is Crimea gone from Ukraine as far as these negotiations are concerned?
I don't really know. Quite frankly, I think that folks need to present their best offers to the president. The president of the United States will make that decision. He'll make that decision with people like National Security Advisor, like our Secretary of State, like Steve Witkoff. And they're going to weigh the options in a view from an American perspective. So I think it's nice if Ukraine has some thoughts. I'm sure Putin has some thoughts. Let's try to reconcile it together. And if the president can provide that extra oomph to get things done, that's what he's going to do.
So let me ask you about Saturday, because there has been a deadline put down for Hamas to release the rest of the hostages by Saturday, or in the president's words, all hell will break loose. You obviously are intimately involved in hostage negotiations and releases. Tell us what you can about this plan.
I just spoke with the families. We have 7 Americans right now held by Hamas. It's a terror organization, and that's unacceptable. And so I fully believe the president in following through on the what else, because he's done that multiple times before. I think Iran found that out the hard way in our prior administration. And if Hamas wants to test and wants to test that will, I think it's a big mistake. What they should look at is countries that have unilaterally released people, like Russia, even Venezuela, that are usually enemies, and what they're doing in order to make an impression on the president. And I would suggest that approach for them, at least with our Americans, and then with all hostages, because the president has made it clear all hostages have to come back.
But obviously, Israel has said that they are holding to that deadline as well, and that the ceasefire will dissolve at noon on Saturday if the hostages are not released. So that would put these hostages that remain in Gaza in danger, wouldn't it?
Well, I think it's Hamas that's putting those hostages in danger. So as you can see, once again, Hamas is in a position as a terror organization where they're deciding what happens not only to hostages, but to the entire group of the people that live in Gaza, the people that live in the West Bank. They're the reasons that their lives are being destroyed. We need to expunge this threat. And I think they need to come forward and be constructive, or it's going to be a real problem. So I think this is Hamas's decision as a terror organization. We're just following through on what we say.
Yeah, I mean, it's been devastating. Obviously, incredible to see these individuals, the most recent men, come home. We know how hard you have been working on this, and Steve Witkoff. It's very heartbreaking to see the condition that some of these individuals are in, and we hope and pray that these individuals will be released before Saturday at noon, and that we can also work towards peace in that area. Adam Boehler, thank you very much